Okay, should we get started? Bismillah. Bismillah walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So last week, 2 days ago, we talked about the first verse of Surah Al-Mu'minoon. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And we want to wrap up a little bit on that and then get into the second verse today that starts to talk about some of the qualities of the mu'minun, the believers. And so to recap, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, we were looking at it more deliberately with the metaphor of farming as kind of an undertone to our analysis of it. So I'd ask you all to kind of do some reflections relevant to that. If the heart was a piece of earth, a fertile piece of ground, and in your own inward reflection, what are the weeds that you are carrying within that piece of earth? What are the seeds that are being planted, right? Bad traits versus good traits, and cultivating a little bit of a sense around what it means to be a mu'min, not just in terms of the embrace of kind of doctrine, but thinking about it from the standpoints of safety, security, well-being. The hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, Al-Muslimu min salim an-nas min lisanihi wa yadayhi, that the Muslim is the one from whom humanity is protected from their tongue and their hands, and we reflected upon that a little bit. What we're going to go into now is the first set of qualities that serve as a mechanism of maintenance of this success, the falah that the first verse is talking about. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. And I want you to think about this from some of what we were talking about, worldly standards of success versus Quranic standards of success, and think about it in terms of an entire life that's lived, and a recognition of what it means to have success in terms of things that have meaning and things that do not have meaning. Existence in and of itself is not something that is infinite from a worldly standpoint for us. You and I exist in dunya right now, right? Materialistic world, the alam, right? A place of knowing. So Allah is Rabbul Alameen, right? The Lord of the worlds. But we're here, and we're here briefly, and then from here, we move into another phase of existence. Does this make sense so far? Even though we're created beings, we're created for eternal existence, and characteristic of this world and this existence is that we can make choices and have decisions and undertake actions. When you think about it in terms of success, success can be attributed to any endeavor. But for us, falah, as we said last time, is a particular success that is rooted not in something temporary, but in something that is always. That's why ultimate falah is only acquired in the hereafter. May Allah make us people of Jannah. A tragic existence in a worldly sense, then, is to live a life where someone has been successful at something that has no impact on anything. Does that make sense? That if I can live an entire life and produce a book that has really nothing in it, I'm in a place where achievement that's yielded is something that bears no benefit or detriment, or even, God forbid, detriment. There's people right now who from a worldly standard, their success renders wealth and fame and all of these kinds of things, and they are gaining residual benefit from a materialistic standpoint because they were the ones who patented softwares or other things that are killing children in Gaza. Do you know? Why would you want to have success in that regard? And what a tragic approach to success. Do you get what I mean? Or success in a place that has a different layer to it, that is a success that really brings nothing about from the achievement that's accrued. That I got to the highest pinnacle in an arena of existence, that if I never did any of that, it wouldn't have really made a difference to anything. The mu'minoon having this firmly established, as we said last time, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Qad plus the past tense verb means that it's already happened. What's gonna come now is these qualities that are going to tell us how do we essentially maintain that success. And not a success that is subjective to worldly standards. Somebody might say it's good or not, but from the standpoint of divine understanding, these are qualities that will allow for that falah that's already guaranteed to the mu'mineen to have continuity to it. And you're working towards the establishment of it is never going to be something that was futile. The end point is not just about the acquisition of the quality, but the focus is about at least putting in the effort to get to there. That's why we talked briefly at the end of last time about how character can be cultivated and how it can be nurtured. And that this isn't going to work if I tell myself things like, this is just who I am and I'm not able to change, or there's nothing that I have to change within me. A big part of our tradition is the embrace of change and the wanting to move and have growth in different arenas of our lives. So as we start to get into this now, you want to think about it from a standpoint that says, this is something that Allah is telling me is a quality of one who has succeeded, but also a mechanism for that success to have continuity to it. Does that make sense? And I want to juxtapose it with reflection in regards to what I have been socialized with in terms of actual success. And at the end of all of it, when entire life lived is presented to me, is my life going to be something that I succeeded at something that really made no difference to anybody? It doesn't mean I have to think about things at level of grandeur, which is another mode of distraction in modernity. But to succeed and achieve in pursuit of what and give longevity to what, versus I play a role in the crafting of the architecture of my hereafter in the here and now. Make sense? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, Allah says, and then he follows it with the first quality, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. I sent out a document that was on this third verse, if people want to pull it up. And we did last time, just do like a quick explanation of each of these words. Alladhina, the first word of this verse, in Arabic, this is called ism mawsul. It's a relative pronoun. It's going to be like those who have this quality that is being described, but the description is of al-mu'minoon. So everything that we see now is giving us a quality of that group of people that embodies with continuity iman. May Allah make us from amongst them. And so the Ism Mawsul, what it's doing now is it's giving us an indication that there is specificity to the characteristics of falah embodied by the mu'minun. It's not leaving it to a place that's theoretical or abstract or relative. If somebody says to you, how do you know that this is something that maintains and gives continuity? Well, you say, in Surah Al-Mu'minoon, Allah says this. This is the definition that He is offering to us in terms of how we can understand this a little bit more concretely. Alladhina being what ties it to the verse that comes before, and a principle that we'll come back to. There's nothing without meaning in Allah's plan. So here, order matters. And this first quality is written first for a reason. We can ponder and reflect upon why that is, but you don't want to undermine the order in which it's being presented and how it creates a connection point to qualities that are going to be discussed as we move forward through the remaining verses of these 11 verses. And to recap, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she talks about the Prophet alayhi salam's character and says that it is like the Quran, in one narration, she says that these verses are what was reflective of his character. So we want to try to have this going on with us. And this Ism Mawsul is going to lay now the foundation of starting to define who are these believers. And every verse that comes after this that we're looking at that introduces a characteristic is going to have this relative pronoun that comes in as well. The word hum means they in Arabic. And in this sentence, it's not necessary. You don't need the hum here, but it's just adding more emphasis to a verse to be able to give distinction to a particular demographic that embodies this quality. And is creating now, through the inclusion of the word hum, an exclusivity that attaches itself to the initial premise of قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, like who are the people in the class that are paying attention, right? And we could say that there's 100 people online, and by the end of this, there might be 100 people in the room, and people could say that many people came to the class, but we could say the ones in the first row were the only ones that paid attention. It sets like a distinction apart from the whole. Does that make sense? So when you're adding the home, it's giving that much more of a specificity that starts to not create exclusion to a point of ostracization. That's not what we're saying, but giving them more definition in their uniqueness. They're those, they, alladhina hum, fi in Arabic as a preposition is giving a sense that you're inside of something. So somebody who is in salatihim, they are deeply immersed within their prayer. Like they're in the prayer. Does that make sense? So fi is offering that sense of immersion that isn't just that they are praying, but they are within prayer. And it's a very different illustration. Salah in Arabic has a lot of different kind of etymological roots, and we'll talk about those briefly, but we're just doing translation right now. So particularly salah is like our daily prayers, obligatory prayers, recommended prayers, but the performance of a prayer that consists of a standing, bowing, kneeling, prostrating, Salah is very particular, right? Specific words, specific motions at specific times. It's not like dua, where you could be walking down 6th Avenue and making dua. You could be going through the turnstile of a subway and making dua. You could be sitting in the back of an Uber and making dhikr. You could be on a plane and reading Quran. Salah is very particular. Specific words, right? You're not praying your salah in various languages. You're praying it in Arabic. Specific times, right now, you are not going to pray next week's dhuhr, right? You pray next week's dhuhr at dhuhr time. You don't pray it in this moment. And you have specific motions. We don't suddenly say, hey, we're not praying to Mecca. We're going to pray towards the financial district, right? No, we pray towards Mecca. There's postures, there's movements, there's timings, there's words. They have specificity to them. That's what the salah is talking about here. Fi salatihim, it adds now a very particular subjectiveness again, because they're introducing the they twice. Alladina, those whom they, fi salatihim, in their prayer. It doesn't say like in Allah's prayer, right? Fi salatillah is not what the verse says. But the him at the end of this is giving that much more of a sense of ownership, that your salah is for you. Your salah is not for the benefit of the divine. It's not for the benefit of our creator in any way. Whether you prayed or not, it's not going to do a thing for Allah. But your prayer is yours. My fajr is mine. You can't pray my fajr for me as much as I can't pray it for you. These people are embedded in a sense of accountability and ownership to their prayer. Khashi'un, and they engage in that with what's going to be the crux of our conversation today, khushu'. Khashi'un is ism fa'il. It is an active participle that's denoting that this quality is something that comes up with regularity. We're going to see this verse get translated in a lot of different ways, but the quality in and of itself is really important to build a relationship with beyond just theoretical or someone else's words. And you want to know what the word khushu' means to you because of its importance, not just in prayer, but also in prayer and outside of it. Stillness, humility, focus, attentiveness, all kinds of things get described by this word. We want to be able to have a deep connection to it. Because it really makes all the difference in how you experience just the way that the world is engaged. This verse is a nominal sentence in Arabic, what we call jumla ismiya. It's not a verbal sentence. It doesn't say alladina yakshawna fi salatihim, but it says alladina hum fi salatihim khashi'un. When you look at the way that the sentence is structured, the placing of the words in the ways that they are is not necessarily how we speak. They're those who in their prayer are focused, right? Versus they are focused in their prayer. You see? I don't say, in my prayer, have focus do I have focus in my prayer, inshallah, right? The sequencing of the verse has an order to it that is giving that much more of an emphatic, because what is being emphasized here is not necessarily the action in and of itself alone, but the state within the action is what's the quality. Some people can pray but they don't pray with khushu'. You understand? We're going to look at different hadith. The Prophet tells the companion to go back and pray and go back and pray and go back and pray, for you have not prayed. He's going through the motions. There's no stillness to it. The hadith tells us to not pray like a rooster, just pecking at the ground, going up and down super fast, you know? But having a sense of presence and stillness. So if you translate it word by word, those they in their prayer have stillness, is what it's saying. It's getting us from a place where you are now starting to have a distillment of what is the actual objective. And the objective was not just to be somebody who prays, but to pray qualitatively in a certain way. Do you see? Anybody can go through the motions. We were never meant to be a population that just prays with our bodies, but we pray with our hearts. We're going to look at a lot of different things that talk about khushu' in a little bit. The first thing that I would offer to you is that the Prophet, companions, the tabi'een, the generation after the companions, a lot of their definitions of what khushu' is involves the heart as being the place of khushu'. The place where that thing of stillness, of restfulness, of wakefulness, of focus, of attentiveness exists, it's in the heart. So I'd like for us to do, just as more people are trickling in, Allah could have started with any quality. And he could have described and defined any quality in whatever way he wanted to. And we're going to go through 7 qualities over the course of the coming weeks. Why do you think he started first with a quality that is immersed within the heart of a believer? Something that brings you to a place of recognition of something that definitively exists, but its place of existence is localized in the heart. It then has consequence. And we don't want to think of khushu' in and of itself as intangible. The way I hold the cup, right? Water in the cup is like khushu' in the heart, right? Khushu' exists in the vessel. But when I drink the water, it quenches my thirst. The quenching of the thirst is not something that happens for me just looking at the cup. Does that make sense? The quenching of the thirst is a consequence of the drinking of the water. Do you see? Khushu' in and of itself as a state is also a consequence of something. But in order for us to have an increase in it consequentially with deliberateness, you got to first understand how it lives within you. Does that make sense? So why do you think Allah starts with something that exists in the heart before anything else? Let's turn to the persons next to us. If you don't know names, exchange some names. Why do we think when Allah is talking about qualities of the believers who have falah, may Allah make us from amongst them, quality number 1 is starting with the heart? Let's discuss and then we'll come back. Go ahead. Okay, why do we think Allah is starting with a quality that takes root in the heart? Like he could have started anywhere. Do you know? You think about it, well, we'll talk about it in a bit, but why? Why does Allah start with a quality that's in the heart? What did we discuss? Yeah. Keep asking.
We, Muhammad and I discussed that.
Assalamu alaikum. So in my pair, kind of combine our responses, which is that it begins someplace that is internal. The heart is internal, and the internal affects the external. Sort of like you could see somebody who maybe looks lethargic, they're not moving very fast, and you could assume they may be sick. It's the internal thing that's affecting their external. And then the second part is that it's from the heart where our purest intention comes from. So if you're going to begin anywhere, in Islam, we always begin with our intention, and the root of our intention, what we truly desire, comes from the heart.
Okay. Yeah. Tanya, go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. I really love what my group shared. They said they got scientific here, but they mentioned that the heart is obviously the only part of the body. Once it's dead, everything is dead. Once it's where it pumps oxygen, and it's the place that carries us. You can have so many broken things, but if your heart is dead, then it's dead. So the heart is the focal point of connection. And something else we talked about is God's love languages. And so we talked about specifically, I was watching a lecture by Abdurrahman Murphy, and he mentions that God has love languages, and the 5 pillars is one of the love languages, and Salah is the #1 love language for Allah. So
Great. Other thoughts? Why do we think Allah starts with the heart? Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. The first thought I got is linking this with the ayah, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. So at the end of the day, all what we do, it will be judged by the soundness of our heart. So this is the first idea. The second, when I link this, the act of salah and khushu' in salah with the idea of al-falah, which we connect with the word falah, who attends to his land, and he makes every effort to make it pet-free, insect-free, pest-free, so he gets the crop he wants to yield. So we have to do the same with our heart. And we have the chance to do this 5 times a day. So it entails the same persistence that Allah does every day in his land.
Jazakallah khair. Allah is starting with a quality of the heart, and we're saying that there's not anything without meaning in Allah's plans. Somebody took their shahada here right now, and they said, tell me what this Islam thing is about. What would you give to them? And the explanation of it, Allah blesses you with young people in your life, children, nephews, nieces, little cousins, and you're teaching them deen, you're teaching them Islam. What is it? And is it just the mechanics? Is it just the form? The verse in and of itself is talking to us about ritual, but it's combining it with something that qualitatively has that inward component to it. It's not just talking about the outward, it's talking about the outward, and what's indicative of success in the outward is rooted in an inward state. In order for us to increase in khushu', you're gonna have to have a sense of how you engage your heart to begin with. And not just repeating somebody else's words or thinking about how you consume and consume and consume, but definitively there are peoples who have lived in early generations of this religion, that we know their names, and they talk about khushu' going back to the heart as it relates to prayer in and of itself. The Quran, it tells us, إِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ, that this is something that's hard for people, except for people of khushu'. May Allah make us from amongst them. And if you're ever in a place where I can't have focus, it's really hard, I just feel like everything is all over the place, is my go-to to try to think about things that are happening outside of me, or to be able to think about what's going on within me. We're going to talk about some of these things today, and you're going to want to reflect on it in a way that's not self-deprecating, but to be able to say that this thing of khushu' can go up and down. It is attached to various things, but I have the ability to harness it. I'm just going to get out of it what I put into it. And step number one is being able to look at it from the standpoint of the heart. I just put into the WhatsApp group about 15 different sayings of khushu' that came from some of the companions, some of the tabi'een, that we can read through really quickly. And you want to go back and reflect upon them. But I want you to be able to think about, because in a bit, we'll also look at this website by Abu Amina Ilyas. His name is Justin Parrott, where he compiles hadith and categorizes them. So this second post that I just put are hadith that are not exhaustive, but that he has tagged under the category of khushu', sayings of the Prophet ﷺ in large part, but also incorporating some sayings of companions. But here you have individuals who lived during the time of the Prophet and after, and they're defining what khushu' is. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, he says, khushu' is in the heart, and the limbs become soft and humble because of it, right? So the consequence of having this thing in your heart is that it will then bear impact on the rest of your being. Relevant in prayer, because if your heart is still, your body will be still, is what we're taught. You know, they're not separate. All of you is connected to the rest of you. Umar radiallahu anh, he says, raise your heads, for khushu' is in the hearts. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he says, their khushu' means they are fearful, people who have khawf, and they are calm, right? People who have sakina. May Allah make us from amongst them. The Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he says, their khushu' was in their hearts, so they lowered their gaze and humbled themselves because of it. Sa'id ibn Musayyib, rahimahullah, he says, if this person's heart had khushu', his limbs would have khushu', meaning seeing somebody who's kind of just fidgety and all over the place in their prayer. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman says, the first thing you will lose from your religion is khushu'. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he says, khushu' is not in the lowering of heads, rather khushu' is in the hearts. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, rahmallah, he says, they used to dislike that a person shows more khushu' than what is in his heart, meaning like the embellishment of things. Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, if the heart has khushu', the limbs will have khushu'. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad says, to show more khushu' than what is in your heart is hypocrisy upon hypocrisy. Ibn Sirin, rahmallah, he says that they used to say khushu' does not go beyond the heart, meaning that it begins there. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahmallah, says khushu' is the heart standing before the Lord in humility and submission. Ibn Rajab says the foundation of khushu' is a qalb that is soft, gentle, and tranquil. May Allah give us hearts that are like this. Mujahid says that khushu' is calmness and humility. Al-Dhahabi says it was from the distinguishing traits of the Salaf to have khushu' in prayer. 15 different people who, whether you know their names or not, that's fine, it's not the point, but their names are known to different peoples who read different texts. They'll come up in different ways. They are all referencing words that give indication that they have built a relationship to the concept. None of them is saying 14 times over, Ali radiallahu anh said, this is khushu'ah, and then just repeating the phrase. But they are putting in their own words, this is what this thing means, and this is what this thing looks like, and this is where this thing lives, and this is how it bears impact. You see? And at this juncture in our phase of existence, you want to have definition to words because we understand the meanings of things through the names of things, but a name that has ambiguous meaning to it is going to have us not get to a definition of a destination because you can't reach something that's undefined. If I said go there, what does that mean? All of you could go anywhere if I just say go there. And if you're not investing the time to then be able to build deep reflective understanding, step number one says, this is a thing that is in the heart. We talked last time about two concepts, right? Takhliya wa tahliya, that you empty something, right? It gets emptied before you adorn it. So the spiritual heart, it has capacity. I can't fill this cup with all of this tea and not expect that it's going to overflow, correct? So in order for me to put into something that's full, I have to empty first and then fill, right? So if I want to have this thing of still, submissive focus in my heart, I gotta first know what's going on inside and what it is that I'm attaching and putting in the presence of the most important part of my being. And why am I separating deliberately from things that I know allow for my heart to flourish inside? Does that make sense? And everything can't always just be done in a hyper mode. It's very purposeful that things get dispersed seasonally throughout our religion. Ramadan, and then there's post-Ramadan. If you were living the way you live in Ramadan the whole year, you would burn out. You go for Umrah, you sleep 3 hours a night. You cannot sleep 3 hours a night for your entire life. You will die soon, right? Allah grant us all good deaths. But in understanding and recognizing why there's modes that have this kind of seemingly oscillation, there's an opportunity for us to have increase and then stabilization, and increase and stabilization. If you don't spend some time thinking about the space that is the abode of this quality, how is the quality going to find its presence in a place that's already filled with other stuff? Does that make sense? I sent a link to hadith that are categorized around khushu'. And what I'd like for you to do is, there's 2 pages of these. They have maybe about a dozen different hadith. There's subheadings to all of them. Hadith on fiqh, hadith on sujood, salah, repentance, etc. You want to spend some time with these hadith in a reflective mode on creating a definition of the quality. Does that make sense what I'm saying? What I'd like for us to do right now is turn to the persons next to us in pairs, in small groups. There's barakah in reading the words of the Prophet ﷺ. You should be reading Quran as much as you should be reading hadith. We're not saying that you have to derive hukam from your recitations of things, but just read it and try to nuance an understanding so that religion isn't just somebody taught me the mechanics of the prayer. You're going to the source that is telling you this is how we understand this from multiple vantage points. Do you get what I mean? Some of you have never read a book of hadith on your own before, picked it up to say this is what it says. It's not a knock on anybody. You don't have to do that to be Muslim. That's not what our religion requires. Some of you have never talked to somebody after reading a hadith saying, what do you think this means to you? And a lot of you have never been asked, what do you think the hadith means from your perspective? We're not saying, can you tell me something that's deeply doctrinal Can you give me a point of creed derived from this? Can you tell me the how-tos and do's and don'ts? I'm just telling you to read the words of the best of creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then sit with your sister or brother and talk about it in the particular frame of khushua. So we can start to utilize what makes us distinct as humans and deepen in our defining of something that's not just rooted in conjecture or hypothesis. I think, I feel, but it's got a base to something of people who reflected, pondered, but also were the ones who were right there experiencing revelation, or he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last one to receive revelation in the world in its entirety. If this is quality number one of the mu'mineen who are succeeded, they have falah, we probably want to know what the word means, right? So that we can then say, this is how I inculcate it, because what? I don't want to have a tragic existence, that my success was rooted in the pursuit of things that ultimately had no meaning to them. I want to be successful in the things that are going to help to frame the architecture of my hereafter. Here's bucket number one in this list of qualities. May Allah make us from amongst those. So you don't have to read all of them, but try to go through the list and turn to the couple of people next to you right now and read like 2 or 3 of them together. Some of you read the first couple, some scroll down and read the next few, some go to the second page and read those, and think about why Abu Amina Ilyas is categorizing these under khushua. And let's just read some of the hadith on this in these small groups, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Does that make sense? Actually do it. Do you know? So it's in the WhatsApp group, the second link that I put under the sayings of the Salaf and what they said about khushua. Just open the link, share if somebody next to you doesn't have it, and just read a few of these and think about how it helps you to define this term khushua, and then we'll come back and discuss. Go ahead.
Are these hadith or are these because a lot of these, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but a lot of these look like they're like companions. I should report, for example, that's one. Okay, well, I'll find the one that are sorry.
Okay.
morale.
Yeah. It depends on if a companion is saying it or if it's like somebody after them. But he also includes like sayings of people that come after too. Yeah. Okay. What did we take away so far? Maybe some people can tell me from the hadith that they read, as you are looking at them, what are some of the things that you can say, you could add to, or nuance your understanding of khushu'ah from these hadith? Maybe we can hear from a few people. Yeah, go ahead.
So me and the couple people next to me, we subhanAllah, like all opened our phones to look at the hadith that says, "Do you talk to your nafs in prayer?" And we found it so relatable because that like constant inner talk is just constantly in the background, and that's like something that we have to be very aware of. And we joked that we do say the same thing that this hadith says, that we try to remind ourselves that we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my sister beautifully shared that like every single prayer would be our last. We actually have no idea. And that we should be meeting Allah in like the best way possible at every point that we can, and we should maintain awareness of that.
Great. And how you talk to yourself and self-talk makes a big difference, right? Yeah. And you're bringing yourself to this in your entirety. What else can you take from some of the hadith? Did anybody read a different hadith? Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
I'm sorry.
One that I read was recommendation to recite distinctly and not too quickly. So personally, during my prayer, I've noticed like, I guess before I went to Umrah, like I would like pray Surah Al-Fatiha and all my other surahs during prayer, like really quickly and just get the prayer done with. But I noticed that when I recite everything slower, I'm more focused because I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. So that way it diverts my thought process into just the recitation itself and not things going on in my life. And yeah, this one really hit home.
Yeah. Just slow it down a bit. Do you know? You want to have stillness. How can you have stillness in agitation? It doesn't work. Do you know what I mean? It's like really, really tough. I was on the subway with some of the people from Monday night's class, and they made me get on their train with them instead of the train that would get me to my train on time. And so I was trying to get to Grand Central, and from 42nd Street and 6th Avenue, I had 8 minutes to get to my track. I'm an old 43-year-old man to get from 6th Ave and 42nd Street to 3rd Ave and 42nd Street in 8 minutes, bobbing and weaving through people. And I got on the train and I made it, alhamdulillah. And I looked like I was about to have a heart attack because of how deeply I was breathing. I sprinted to this thing. And people are looking at me, one, because I look the way that I look. And then I'm looking as if like just the world is coming to an end. And it was not like a good formula for everyone who was staring at me at that time, right? Every part of my physical being is in a state of just pain. Do you know? I'm not going to make dua in that moment. Like, what kind of focus would I have at that point in time? Do you see what I mean? If you're just agitated, you're agitated. How do you bring stillness? Like, you slow it down a little bit. Do you know? And the crux of prayer is recitation, right? If you're running through your recitation, how is it any different from me running down the street in this kind of chaotic state? There's and the crazy thing, there's a train 20 minutes after the train. Do you know? I can just get on that train. Do you see what I mean? But sometimes the things that we're speeding up for also just fundamentally don't make any sense, right? And what is it taking away? It's taking away a piece of existence. You're letting go of sakina at the expense of saying, I'm the one that foolishly scheduled dhuhr between a meeting that ends at 2:55 and the next one that starts at 3, and I still have to figure out how to make wudu in a public bathroom and find a place to pray all within those 5 minutes. Well, then you're going to get out of it what you put into it. Your iman shows that you're still committed to prayer if you pray during that time. May Allah make it easy for you, right? You're being Muslim in a non-Muslim world and trying your best, but fitting it in where then you can only recite Fatiha in 10 seconds and everything else, I mean, it's going to create agitation. You were going to say something too, right? You had your hand raised? You read the same hadith? Yeah. Anybody read any other hadith from this section? Yeah.
I read about the repentance hadith where a man was talking about how.
Oh, that was a long one.
Yeah.
Malik ibn Dinar.
Yes, that one. And I think the imagery was really vivid, in which he was running away from this blue and dark dragon that was chasing after him. And he was running in panic, and he was like begging this old man to save him and swearing and on Allah and being like, save me. And the old man was just like, he tried, but he couldn't fight the dragon. And basically the meaning from that hadith was that the old man was his good deeds that wasn't that strong, and the dragon was his, his bad deeds and his, and it was just kind of what really shook him, and he woke up and he was like, I have been, and he just sort of repented and started praying again after just that very vivid, frightening moment. And I think the hadith was scary, but it was also sort of how we don't really see what our day-to-day things that we might not be taking seriously, how they accumulate over time, and somehow our good deeds might become like the old man that are somehow not powerful enough when we are resurrected back.
Yeah. Reflection, contemplation. That hadith, if you read it in its entirety, and then you try to think about what it brings up for you within a particular frame, how does this relate to khushu'? There's a lot of things that you can extrapolate from it. If we continue in the packet, I'm going to put in the WhatsApp group 2 links. If you weren't here last time, I shared with people Hans Ver Arabic English Dictionary. These 2 links are going to take you to the pages that have the root letters for khushu' and salah. Does anybody remember what this is called in Arabic? We said it on Monday. The science of what? Yeah. Almost, yeah. Yeah, ilm al-ishtiqaq, right? It's the science of the etymology of these words, right? The way the derivation is rooted in the root letters. And you want to get to a point where you just get one of these books and you just flip through them. You deepen the understanding, because language is so beautiful. And one of the things that makes us different from the rest of the creation is Allah's given us the ability to express in so many different ways, right? Even in English, if I was to ask most of you how you feel, you probably would just keep repeating on the same cycle, the same 5 words. But joy is different from contentment, which is different from happiness, which is different from ecstasy. If you just say, I'm happy, Or most of you just tell yourself you're angry when really you're sad or you're grieving or you're frustrated. And then you can't solve for things, not because the answers and strategies don't make sense, but you're asking the wrong question because the terminology isn't actually as accurate as it could be. Do you know? If we click on the first link for khushu' and see what it's giving us. So if you go, if you go on page 239 in the book, on the PDF it's 238, in the bottom right-hand corner, it has the roots. To be submissive, be humble, to fade one's voice, to lower one's eyes, to display humility, to be moved, to be touched. This is what one in that state qualitatively is experiencing. Salah, if we click on the root Sad Lam Wow, towards the middle of the page, to perform the salah, prayer, worship, to lead people in prayer, the official Islamic prayer ritual, intercession, intercessory prayer, blessing. You can kind of read through, there's a connection, there's a link that gets into the base of this. When you put these two things together, it's giving a very specific state qualitatively within a very particular time. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ means that they have khushu' in their salah, which right now we're not in salah, correct? Right? It's not a trick question. Are we praying right now? No, right? We're going to pray Maghrib, inshallah, in a little bit. May Allah make it a prayer in which we feel deeply connected to Him. Understanding the heart and like the qualities that can nuance definitions of khushu', which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit, but the particulars of this being in salah in the verse, the quality is about its manifestation in salah before anything else. Why? Why wasn't it just about believers who have khushu' always? 24/7, they are in this state. Why is it not talking about it in anything more broadly? All it is bringing it to is 5 times a day, which really, if you're just doing the fara'id of prayer, your obligations, take aside wudu, take aside dua, any adhkar that you do after the prayer. I'm just talking about 2 rak'ahs at Fajr. How long does it take? 2 rak'ahs at Fajr, 4 at Dhuhr, 4 at Asr, 3 at Maghrib, 4 at Isha. You're being asked in a 24-hour time span for 5 separate times to, for a few minutes at a time, just have some focus. Why? Why start with khushu' in salah as the benchmark above anything else? Because Jannah is Jannah, right? May Allah make us people of Jannah. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ Indeed, the believers have succeeded. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ Those who for a few minutes a day, standing in ritual prayer, have some humble, submissive focus. It's a little bit in comparison to the entirety of a day spent, right? Why does it start with salah as opposed to anything else or a more broader definition? These are the mu'mineen that are being described. And if you can't be right with God when you are literally standing in front of him in conversation, when else are you going to be right with God outside of the course of those moments? Salah in and of itself, communing with the divine, and you are engaging in that conversation with your creator. The obstacles, other things we'll talk about in a little bit, but the particulars of this being in salah doesn't mean that it is unimportant, but the inner quality will bear outward manifestation, and the salah being the anchor and root of a believer's routine. I say it because I love you. It's different if you struggle to pray Fajr. It's hard. Allah make it easy. But how you spend tonight will be indicative of how valuable Fajr actually is to you. The two sunnahs of which is worth the entire world and everything in it. I'm going to get out of it what it is that I put into it. So you start with salah because salah is the precursor to all of it. The hadith says the first thing is salah. If it's good, everything else is good. If it's not good, everything else is not good. May Allah make it easy. You have a God that is so merciful. The hadith tells us that when the angels go to assess the prayer and find deficiencies in our fara'id, and they go back to Allah and said, they didn't do everything they were supposed to do, our God tells those angels who do whatever he tells them to do, go back and see if they did anything extra. See if they did anything additionally that we might be able to compensate for some of it. Looking for a reason to forgive. And if you leave early, which you shouldn't, one of the things that we're going to talk about that's an obstacle to khushu'ah is that you cannot pray to a God that you don't know. You just can't. And if you are worshiping something else, this is not a religion that works when you worship two things. If you are worshiping the validation of others, you are worshiping your own desire, you are worshiping wealth and material gain, you are worshiping physical beauty, you are worshiping standards of success that are going to start and stop with the world at the expense of where you might be in the world beyond this one. Or you believe in a God that does not come from a book that he has given to you to understand him. You might by osmosis just pick something up, but wouldn't it make it much easier to read the Quran that he gave to you to then determine, is this the God I believe in? Do you see? The salah specified here cannot be undermined. And it's within that the khushu'ah is being qualified as a characteristic and quality of those believers who have falah. May Allah make us from amongst them. What I'd like for you to do individually, if you look at the workbook and you go to the section that's on reflection, you go to page number 2. The first reflection exercise on page number 2, it says presence check. During salah, where is your mind usually? Are you fully focused, sometimes drifting, mostly distracted? What are you thinking about? You gotta think about what gets in your own way and how you get in your own way. You know, the hadith that tells us there's no prayer when food is served doesn't mean you don't pray on time, but somebody just put out a lavish spread of food that's sitting minutes away from where you will be eventually. Your mind is going to be about that, right? A lot of you do this. Don't pretend like you don't, but a lot of you pray when you have to go to the bathroom so badly. And you're like clenching up everything, hoping that nothing leaks out somehow in the course of the prayer. You're telling yourself what your conversation with Allah is worth to you. You won't even make wudu again for the sake of that conversation. And you've created the distraction that's keeping you from having the presence in the prayer, right? And it comes up in a lot of different ways. The example that I like to use, before I got married, my apartment was like a motel for single Muslim men in all of North America that made their way through New York City. My son Kareem, alhamdulillah, we've moved now out of our apartment. I left my job at NYU. But the poor guy, when we used to live in that apartment, we'd go to places and all these random guys would come up to Kareem and say, I used to sleep in your bedroom. And my son is 10 now. So you can imagine, as a 5-year-old to a 8-year-old, all these random Muslim guys coming up to you saying, I used to sleep in your bed. And you'd be like, Baba, why did all these men live with you? And why do they live in my bedroom, right? And I had a roommate who we were watching the NBA finals. It was around this time of the year, and Maghrib time was coming, and it was like the middle of the game. And I said, hey, we should probably pray. And he was, let's wait. It wasn't just me, it was everybody else. And then eventually there was a commercial. So he said, okay. And then he muted it, but left the television on. And in my apartment, the television was facing us when we faced the Qibla, right? So he was still watching the game while we were praying. Do you know? We're like, hey man, it's just not gonna work if we do it that way. Do you see what I mean? It's creating the distraction. You understand? Usually the thoughts that come are not unimportant, but also other stuff in addition to what is important can get in the way. If you are not willing to go and make wudu for 2 minutes, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact, right? Does that make sense? Let's take a minute individually. During salah, where is your mind usually? Fully focused, sometimes drifting, mostly distracted? And 2, what do you usually think about? If you don't have a notebook, we have a lot more notebooks, alhamdulillah, that were given to us today, as well as a lot more pens. You should be reflecting, writing down. You have to care about your heart enough to engage the exercise. If you don't want to write in a notebook, pull out a phone and write in it. I would say don't do that if your relationship to devices are mindless. But take the notebook, write at the top of it, during salah, where is my mind usually? And then what do I usually think about in the course of it? All of the notebooks are empty, yeah. And everybody else who has something to write with, just start for yourself individually. Where is your mind usually at in salah? And what are you usually thinking about in the course of your salah? Yeah, I think there's a bunch.
Do you prefer that we ask questions during or after?
After.
Okay.
So after. Yeah. You can take as many as you want. Yeah. Okay. There's still 2 notebooks left if anybody still wants one later. How's that? Okay, you want to continue with that when you get home. You should, in a 24-hour period, have a regular moment of reflection, like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, a place where you just find some stillness, a spot where you can sit, be with yourself, inventory the day that was just lived, envision the day that's ahead, reflect on where you are right now, especially in the frame of a world that still awaits us. May Allah make us people of Jannah. So I want to talk about a couple of different things in terms of how khushu' functions, and to think about it not in the sense of concentration alone, but really about an awareness that has reverence of the divine, right? This is what a lot of it goes down to, right? Taqwa, God consciousness. Ihsan is about you worship Allah as if you can see him. Although you can not see him, he can see you. Do you know there's this presence with Allah in these different facets of our life? And so if I start to think out the particulars of where I'm at in prayer, the formula of salah is that you pray to Allah, right? So if you conceptualize like a written formula, here's the prayer, that's the action. You're praying to Allah and you're at the beginning of it. You can't change God. Your prayer pretty much is the same thing. You might pick the verses that you recite, but formulaically it's the same. So the only thing that can change is you. That's it. All you can really make malleable in that interaction with salah is you. So what you're doing outside of salah is going to impact what you're bringing into salah. Do you see? And if you live a scattered existence, you cannot then have a gathered presence. It's going to be very, very difficult if everything outside of it is chaotic and hectic That's where you start to think about the entirety of the day. And where are things that you can cultivate outside of the prayer? One, you start to make sure that consumption and two parts of what you're consuming through are things you start to harness control over because they impact the heart. Bucket number one, and why Hassan al-Basri and others attach khushua to lowering the gaze, is not just because of some simplistic reductive understanding of gender interactions, but so much of what your world is experiencing right now is overt visual consumption. You are visually consuming so much. Just where you eat too much, you drink too much, if you are just seeing again and again and again, and the horrors of things that you see, everything takes on the tenor now of being sensationalized in modes that are pornographic. Maybe not visually pornographic in the sense of things that are illicit, but they have the same characteristics so that it sticks in your head. People want their products to stick in your head. They want a chilling effect of you seeing gore and war and all the outcomes of atrocity just again and again. You close your eyes and you just see what you were scrolling through. You close your eyes and you just see what you were watching. Lowering your gaze is about understanding that eyesight is different from hearing. Because if next to me somebody is gossiping, I don't have the ability to close my ears. But you do have the ability to close your eyes. There's a different sense of permission to what you visually consume versus what you consume at an auditory level. Does that make sense? So what's going to create agitation inwardly is that consumption. Don't look at your phone as much as you do. Don't be on a device as much as you are. Stop watching as much stuff as you watch. That's not meant to be something that you hear but don't listen to. It is going to kill your heart. And you know what's going to happen? The product that is seeking to be placed in between the TV that you're binging, they want your attentiveness. So that when you're prostrating, it's not that you're thinking about the argument with your mom or the difficulty of finding a job, but when you're prostrating, in the back of your head is the ad that was coming up when you watched something for 10 hours or scrolled again and again and again. The second part of what you have control over is guarding your tongue. Aside from how you hurt someone else's heart, from how you talk to them, how you talk to you is going to kill your heart. And so outside of the prayer, you have a visual consumption that becomes tempered, and you only speak when it's necessary. And if you're going to speak, you speak good things. You reduce then unnecessary speech. It's not talking just for the sake of talking. Third, you got to build some periods of reflection and silence into your day. Most of you are the only Muslim that frequents the spaces that you're in. You don't know how to tell your professor, I have to go pray. You don't know how to tell your boss, I have to go pray. You don't know how to explain, this is why my foot is in the sink. Do you know? Why is your foot in the sink? Do you know what I mean? Oh, I'm abluting right now, right? Oh, what is that? Do you know? Already awkward upon awkward upon awkward. If the only time that you bring stillness to your day creates anxiety because you're trying to do it in spaces not built for it, that's not stillness. So before you pray, give yourself a 5-minute reprieve from the TV you were just watching. You got to let your brain reset a little bit. Go use the bathroom instead of holding it in. Doesn't make any sense. There's no stillness there, right? Get to a place where you're exercising the development of stillness by having a relationship to stillness outside of salah. The Prophet ﷺ told his companions, you pray Fajr in Jama'ah, you sit until the sun has risen, you pray 2 rak'ahs, Ishraq prayer, the reward as if it was a Hajj and Umrah, complete, complete, complete. If you've traveled with me anywhere, we always pray Ishraq together. But the Prophet is telling his Sahaba to start the day by sitting and being still. When do you do that? With regularity, so it builds as a muscle. Focus is not something that happens organically. When my kids were little, lesser now, but they still do it a little bit. They're 10 and 13, mashallah. Especially when they were little, it would sometimes take them, no joke, like an hour to eat a bowl of Cheerios, man. I'm like, just eat the cereal, dude. What? It's gross after a little bit of time. It's all soggy and whatever. I'd be like, guys, just focus. Guys, just focus. Yes, Baba. Yes, Baba. Then after some time of me saying focus, and it clearly wasn't working, I said to my children, do you know what it means to focus? And they said, no, Baba. And in that situation, who's the idiot? Me, right? I'm the idiot. The majority of your life unconsciously has been spent lacking focus. One of the few things you can do when you're exhausted, other than sleep like you should, is watch TV. You don't need to be replenished to watch TV. You can be brain dead in watching TV, right? No focus, an absence of focus. If you juxtapose the amount of hours in your lifetime that you have been spending your time unfocused, in comparison to the moments where you deliberately try to inculcate focus, it's like drops in a bucket in comparison to an entire ocean that lacks structure. That's what you're fighting against. So you got to build with some gradual progression. 3-4 minutes, and that's why you want a notebook, because it's going to give your mind a little bit more of a deliberate thing to have attention towards. If you just exist in here all of the time, shaitan's got you. Build some regular periods of silence and reflection, and then the exercise of dhikr you want to start to bring into your routine, even if it's just a little bit. You got to run half a mile before you run a mile, before you run 10 miles or 20 miles. You start to build it with gradualism, the tadarruj we talked about when we were talking about in the Medina Sirah, that the fast of the white days, 3 days a month, came before the fast of Ramadan. That there was a progression towards things. Do you see? To be in a place where you develop khushua by having understanding and comprehension. It is negative self-talk to say, I don't know Arabic. You don't need to know Arabic to understand the meaning of Fatiha. There's enough that is produced in every language spoken in the world, including English. What you're telling yourself is a lame excuse, and what excuses do is give you a pile of nothing at the end of the day. Somebody takes their shahada today, they have an excuse. But if you have been Muslim for however many years of your life at this point, and you still don't know what Fatiha means, that's a you problem. 7 verses over the course of decades of existence, you can learn what it means. And the idea that it's in Arabic is arbitrary. If you've never spent the time to understand what you're saying, they could be speaking any language that you don't understand. You want to bring presence in by knowing the meanings of the words and putting in the time to be able to then develop that attentiveness. So it's not just somebody speaking something that I don't know. The Quran is so remarkable that people don't even have to know what it says for their hearts to still be moved by it. They can just listen to its recitation, and when it's done in those ways, put you in front of lines of people who have said, I heard the adhan being called, it was so beautiful. I didn't even know what it was. It just sounded true. But you get to a point where you stand prayer after prayer and there's not a sense of the meaning of it. And you can learn all the stuff that you've learned at this point in your life, man. You don't want to think about it as burdensome responsibility, but a liberation of your inner self. You have spent however much time doing what you do. You don't have the time to pick up and say, what does Alhamdulillah mean actually? A third bucket, slowness and deliberation, right? Tawheed is saying, you just start reading slowly. You bring some slowness to the movements. And if you got to plan your day around it more deliberately, it's not easy. Some of us are in spaces where Dhuhr and Asr, we're just going to bang it out and get it done as best as possible. But there's a difference between saying, hey, I got caught in the middle of Times Square at Maghrib time with no plan, and now I'm trying to find an empty dressing room in a store and praying with anxiety, versus I visualize my day in its entirety. And I know there's going to be these moments where I'm just praying through the prayer, but here's these other times where I am going to build in 10 minutes before, make wudu, pray my sunnahs, sit in just stillness. I asked Jamal how many people have been coming in here. He said pretty much every day before this time in the evening, about 100 to 150 people come in. And I said, what are they doing when they come in here, right? I didn't say it like that, like, what are they doing? I was like, tell me, what are they doing? And he said, some people just take a chair and they go sit next to the window and they just look outside the window. Why can't you do that? We used to have a multi-million-dollar view overseeing Washington Square Park at NYU. It's still there. You can still go, mashallah. I was shocked at how many people that were non-Muslim came and sat and looked out that window versus the number of Muslims who were more content, like staring at other things. Bring some stillness and slowness into your life, man. Who's going to give you permission to rest other than you? Why are you reading through the prayers if you're on a sprint of some kind? Let the words like soak in and absorb. And in each position, find some rest. You're going to go from a standing to a bowing, sit in the bowing position for a bit. You're not just, getting out the words as quickly as possible. Let them actually be spoken with enunciation from your tongue. Stillness, deliberation. It doesn't matter if you only know Fatiha, you only know a verse of the Quran, you only know Kawthar, Ikhlas. Don't look at yourself in terms of what's not there. Look at what's there and then identify with deliberation. This is not meant to be something that you rush through. You're going to get out of the exercise what you put into it. You got to slow it down a little bit. You're not in a place where you make it devoid of meaning. To bow in ruku' is not to just bend your body. But when you're bowing, it's an act of humility. If I stood up and bowed to someone right now, what would that mean? You're bowing to the divine. You are putting yourself in a place where your prostration is demonstrating complete ubudiyya to Allah. It's not going to work if every day you're actually prostrating to something else. Money, the validation of others, your own desires and whims. The two things coexisting is not harmonious. It's in conflict with one another. And then the things that are meant to be standards before the prayer are particular, right? If you study fiqh, you have conditions for prayer, right? The shurut of salah. So you face the Kaaba, right? As an example, you're in a state of wudu. There's no filth on your body. The clothes that you wear are clothes that are supposed to be worn in prayer. That means not just how you police women's clothes, but men's clothes. If you are praying and your pants are showing your backside, it doesn't work. Aside from anything else, the prayer is valid. Does that make sense? There's people who the Prophet had, the Ashab al-Sufa, who didn't have anything. There's hadith where he would tell the women to raise their heads slowly when they were raising from their sajda, because there were men praying in front of them who didn't have a lot of clothes, and that at times perhaps something would get exposed. That's not us. You dress with a sense of how I'm prepping in relation to this thing. A condition of the prayer is that the time of the prayer comes in. You don't pray Dhuhr at Maghrib time. You pray Dhuhr at Dhuhr time. Having reverent awareness of the divine cannot be actualized if whatever you're worshiping that told you to pray after the prayer time is done is what's deciding when you pray. Then Allah is not the one deciding when you pray. Whoever you're listening to that's telling you not to pray is the one that you're worshiping at that moment, right? Yes or no? Yeah. So you're going to get out of it what you put into it. A condition of the prayer is that the time of the prayer has come in. Just like you can't pray Dhuhr before Dhuhr starts, you shouldn't be praying Dhuhr after Dhuhr ends. You have to make it up if you've missed it. May Allah accept from us and all of our efforts. You gotta try your best, but you gotta be real with what your best is. And the body is not irrelevant to this. And how it is that you ready the body for that conversation with the divine is important. Make wudu as a spiritual act. Before you pray Fajr, you make wudu, meaning the first religious act of the day is not prayer, it's wudu. You can't undermine its importance and just run through it as if it's just mechanical. And this is a challenge with ritual that has mechanics to it. You can get through it super quickly. Does that make sense? That's not the goal. You're not finishing first. You're just in a place where it's about transforming your heart. Even if you exercise well, I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands to exercise or not, right? But if you actually know how to exercise, a solid bench press isn't one that's just going back and forth, up and down really fast. People who know how to work out, they actually go down slowly, not super fast. And then they go up slowly too, because that's going to build the most muscle. Not just going fast back and forth, but even if you can lift it well, you're still bringing it down with hesitation and you're pushing it back with hesitation. It's going to give you the most workout. Our prayer is the same thing. Some of the things that are going to get in the way of khushu', one is going to be very directly an attachment to dunya. Like worldliness and an attachment to worldliness is going to be there. If you have an overinvestment in worldly concerns, wealth, status, anxieties, this is going to fill your heart with competing priorities. When you're in prayer, this stuff doesn't vanish. They just now start to present themselves more insistingly, right? 2, if you habituate sin, haram, it's not a judgmental thing. A lot of people turn to haram in the absence of community support. Some of us do haram because we're indifferent to it. We just don't care. If you habituate it, it's going to have still consequently an impact back on your heart. There's a difference between a willful versus indirect consumption of the things that are haram. And so if you become desensitized to it through repetition, it doesn't mean it's still not doing to you what it does to you. I gave an example earlier on of my son as a young boy. I found him in tears after he watched a movie in which a father slapped his child. And he said, "Baba, how could a father do that?" And he's in tears. He can't understand, but he consumed haram. He saw it. If most of us saw that on a screen, we wouldn't cry in the same way. Allah knows best. But his innocent heart is responding the way a heart should respond to seeing that kind of dhulm. Just because we don't respond that same way because we become desensitized to it, doesn't mean it's not having the same impact. Then you stand in prayer with that heart. A third is that you have inattention and mechanical practice. The prayer becomes routine. There's no reflection to it, and it starts to erode the vitality of the prayer. The familiar is something that it starts to essentially get erased, a relationship with the divine. And elements to it that are sacred start to become mundane and ordinary. Excessive stimulation is gonna make it really hard, And a lot of us turn to devices to just silence thoughts in our head. There's just a lot of stress, and I gotta scroll to make all the voices in my head shut up. But then once you get the device off, the voices just start to pop up again. And when are they gonna pop up? When you're in prayer. And that overt stimulation, it's purposeful to get you to get back on the device as much as possible. You wanna let yourself have a separation from it because it's removing your ability to have sustained presence. I just need a dopamine jolt every so often. And then it starts to interrupt things that are not really supposed to be interrupted. And then I have a misunderstanding of khushu'. Khushu' is not that suddenly the world goes silent. When you learn and study to be an imam, they tell you, for example, if you're making a mistake in your recitation, you have to hear the recitation of the person behind you to correct it. How can you hear the recitation if you're leading the prayer, if khushu' in prayer means you can't hear anything? It doesn't work, right? The Prophet ﷺ shortened his prayer when he heard the cries of a baby so as to not make it harder for the mother. Amazing rahmah. May Allah make us like our Prophet. How can he hear the cry of a child if the point of prayer is that you don't hear anything while you're in prayer? Do you know? That's not how it works. If you go from a second kneeling to standing instead of sitting down and doing tashahhud, somebody behind you might say subhanallah because you made a mistake. You have to be able to hear it. Do you get what I mean? That's not what the attentiveness and the stillness is about. You don't want to misunderstand it. That's why I shared with you those 15 sayings and a link to hadith that talk about khushu'. Go home and spend some time with it. And then there's a gradual ascension to the development of khushu', of that focus. It's not going to happen overnight. You got to work at it. And the biggest variable that's going to play a role in this is what we call ma'arifah, like knowing Allah. I want you to go home between this night and when we meet, not this Monday. I'm going to Uganda on Friday. It's my last international trip until July, inshallah. Make dua, it's my last trip, man. And July will be the next time. So when I'm back, not this Monday, but the Monday after, we're going to meet and do this again. Between now and then, in a moment of stillness, take out a notebook and write at the top of it, who is Allah to me? And what is it based off of? I'm not telling you to write things that are just kind of sentimental. Allah is my friend, right? No. I'm saying, how do you know who God is? Because you can believe Allah is Al-Khaliq, it doesn't mean you believe He is Ar-Rahman. You can believe Allah is Ar-Rahman, it doesn't mean that you believe He is Maliki Yawmiddin and you're going to stand in front of Him one day. May Allah grant us ease on that day. Most of us have an unconsciously driven understanding of the divine. If khushu' is intrinsically linked to reverent awareness of Allah, and I don't know who Allah is to me, then you can see where that gap comes into play. Does that make sense? Then you start reading Allah's book, you start memorizing the names of Allah that we are taught, and you start to engage in a process that lets us really build that sense of focus. I want you to think about one thing that you can do before your salah that's going to help you to also improve focus. Can you make wudu more slowly? Can you sit quietly for a minute? Can you make a short dua? Can you take some time to understand a part of a surah that you're going to recite? Give yourself a tangible task that's going to then bear consequence on the prayer that's ahead. And if you understand that Salah is a meeting with Allah, how would you prepare differently if that's the way that you really understood it to be? How would you behave differently during the course of that prayer? If you go through that entire workbook that I sent to you and you start to track and rate your khushu' daily for your prayers, and you bring some presence into it, and then do the last couple of things from section 7 to 9. It says a dua for khushu', make a personal dua, write it, asking Allah to give you presence in your prayer. Section 9, when you're reflecting on it in the course of a week, did you experience of Salah change this week? How, when did you feel the most khushu'? What still needs work? You want to know the environments that you feel more settled in. People say, I pray better when I'm in Jama'ah. People say, I pray better individually. There's benefits in both of these things. My wife took her Shahada almost 30 years ago now, mashallah. Well before I met her, probably practiced Islam longer than I have. When we got married, in the first however many weeks of our marriage, we were praying every prayer together. We still pray together a lot, but after some time, it was Isha time one day, and she said, you go ahead and pray, I'll pray later. And on my head, all of this stuff just popped up. Hadith about the merits of praying in congregation and verses of Quran, whatever. Usually the instantaneous thoughts are not the best thoughts, right? So I just closed my mouth and I went and prayed. And then later on, rather than assuming, I said to my wife, hey, why don't you want to pray together? And she said that for years of her life, she prayed alone. You can imagine convert woman who also comes from a South Asian background that most people assume converted to get married, let alone the color of her skin makes ambiguous that she's a convert, and what the life is like of many converts to this religion. May Allah grant them ease and forgive us for not honoring the rights of our sisters and brothers. And she said, I played for years by myself. So it's just very different now when we're praying together. It's nice, but it's not what I was accustomed to. There's no way I can understand what that's like experientially other than through empathy, right? Do you see what I mean? That's why you don't want to create absolutes where there's not absolutes, but you want to spend some time in reflection and you want to let yourself bring some presence into it. Make some time to read Allah's book, to know who it is you are standing in reverence of, and spend some time in that reflection. Let's do this for 2 minutes just before we close with dua and pray Maghrib. What are you taking away from tonight's conversation? What is it bringing up for you? Let's discuss a bit, and then we'll come back and we'll make dua and we'll pray. Go ahead. Okay, maybe we could hear from one or two people. What are some of the things we're taking away from tonight's conversation? Anything coming up for people before we make dua? Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I think one thing that we were talking about was like it resonated with us, this idea of what you do outside connects with what you do inside your prayer. And that really spoke to me because both of us kind of have experiences with like spending so much time just taking in and consuming a lot of different stuff. So our mind is just like always flying to the point where like when I was younger, and this is like I'm speaking kind of with a experience, but when I was younger, like I would just be able to sit with myself for a little bit, and my mind would just kind of have a thing. But now it's more just like there's just things happening, and I just kind of become an observer to letting my mind run. And so I feel like Salah becomes one of the only quiet times. So of course, during those times, it's going to be like the few times that my mind is allowed to actually just fly. So that's kind of why you can't just magically expect myself, I guess, to lock in. So
Yeah, bring some more quiet time into your life. Go watch the sunrise, get to the rooftop of a building, go upstate, sit and just be in nature, look at a flower, be with some people who kind of help you release thoughts. But if the one time you find stillness, everything comes out. It's just gonna all come out at that time, right? Anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to just second what he said as well. I think most of us spend most of our time multitasking, like doing multiple things at once. So when it comes to Salah, it's like you have to actually focus on this one thing, and you're not used to that. You're literally doing it day or this first of all, you've been doing your whole life, so it can definitely be conflicting as well.
Yeah. Think about the beauty that the first quality Allah talks about in Surah Al-Mu'minoon is a hidden quality. It's something that you cannot measure externally. Do you know? This is just you with your heart and your creator. That's it. You just got to be real with yourself. The first thing that he is describing of the qualities of the mu'minun that have falah, may Allah make us from amongst them, is that in their salah, they have khushura. You want to learn the words and the terms because some of it just doesn't translate well into English. And you allow for yourself to then take from that a sense that I can increase this thing, it can go up and down, and you work on some of the things we discussed here systematically. A couple of things just before we make dua. We're not going to meet next week. We'll meet again the week after. There'll probably be some other things that happen next week. You just look on the email list for those that, as it's coming out, inshallah. We might potentially start from the Monday after next. Iftars also on Monday nights. We were thinking of starting to do that as we used to do in the past. And I'll put in the WhatsApp group just something to poll people on just how they'd want to be helpful or be a part of that in some way. But look out for that as well. I don't know if there's anything I'm forgetting. Yeah. How was Jamaica? Jamaica was very nice. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, thank you for asking. I went for some meetings. I mentioned to people on Monday who were here. My mother actually got sick while I was in Jamaica. So I had to fly out early from Jamaica back to the city. Alhamdulillah, she's okay and she got discharged. And then I was in the hospital with her for a couple of days. And then I flew to California for some other meetings. But both of those gatherings were really nice, mashallah. I think there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening. And a lot of people are very aware of what our communities do here in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So I'm so grateful that you all keep showing up. Your presence really fills this space with barakah, and you can't undermine that, but you want to understand the reciprocity of it. I would hate to be somebody who gains from your presence, but you don't gain also from being here. And if you do gain from being here, then be here more, right? We have the space open for a reason. So push your nafs down and try to be in spaces that enable your heart to flourish. Inshallah, it'll be gaining it for all of us. Yeah? Okay, let's make dua and then we'll pray Maghrib, inshallah. Allahumma ameen. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لوجهك وعظيم سلطانك لك الحمد حمدا طاهرا طيبا مباركا فيه إلى يوم الدين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. We turn to you, Ya Rabbi, on this night, most merciful, most near. We come to you as we are, not as we wish we were. We come with scattered hearts that struggle to gather themselves when standing before you. We come with tongues that recite what our hearts have not yet fully tasted. We come with prayers that begin with sincerity and too often end in distraction. Yet even in this state, we come because there is nowhere else to go but you. Ya Allah, you know the struggle within us better than we know it ourselves. You know how easily our attention slips away, how quickly the world fills our minds the moment we say Allahu Akbar. You know the burdens we carry into prayer, the worries we do not release, the regrets we cannot silence, the desires that pull us in every direction. So we ask you, not as those who claim presence, but as those who admit absence, grant us khushura, true khushura, the kind that begins in the unseen depths of the heart and rises until even our limbs cannot deny it. Ya Allah, make us of those who arrive when they stand before you. When we say Allahu Akbar, let it not be words spoken by habit, but a truth that shakes the weight of everything else we have magnified in our lives. Let it mean that you are greater than our anxieties, greater than our desires, greater than our distractions, greater than the noise within us and around us. Ya Allah, we confess that our hearts have been trained by this world to never rest. We are always consuming, always checking, always moving, always thinking. Even in prayer, we find ourselves elsewhere. So heal within us this fragmentation. Gather us back from the many places we have left pieces of ourselves. Ya Allah, soften what has become hard within us. Soften the heart that no longer trembles at remembrance. Soften the eye that no longer weeps in humility. Soften the soul that has grown accustomed to heedlessness. Soften the mind that resists stillness even in your presence. We do not ask you for a performance of khushua that pleases others or even ourselves. We ask you for a khushua that is hidden, quiet, and real. A khushua that no one sees but you. A khushua that does not need to be felt intensely to be sincere, but is rooted in turning back to you even when we feel nothing at all. Ya Allah, teach us how to stand before you as the broken stand before the one who heals, as the lost stand before the one who guides, as the weary stand before the one who gives rest. When we bow, strip from us the arrogance we do not notice in ourselves. When we prostrate, return us to the truth that we came from dust, and to the dust we will return. When we rise, do not let us rise unchanged. We live in a time that competes for every fragment of our attention. Our screens call us, our fears call us, our ambitions call us, our memories call us. And yet above all of them, you call us 5 times a day, and still we are distracted. So forgive us for how easily we forget you. Forgive us for how lightly we treat the greatest meeting of our day. Forgive us for standing in front of you while our hearts are elsewhere. Ya Allah, do not leave us in that state. Return us. Even if we return slowly, even if we return weakly, even if we return inconsistently, return us anyway. Make our prayer a place where we learn how to be human again, a place where the ego loosens its grip, a place where time slows down enough for the soul to breathe, a place where we remember that we are not self-sufficient, not self-made, not self-sustained, but always in need of you, Ya Ghani. Ya Allah, if we cannot bring perfect khushua, then do not deprive us of striving for it. If we cannot maintain presence, then do not deprive us of returning to it. If we cannot weep, then do not deprive us of sincerity and dryness. If we cannot feel, then do not deprive us of trying. Let our effort itself be beloved to you. Make our prayers not a witness against us, but a witness for us. Do not let them become hollow repetitions that increase our distance. Let them become bridges, however fragile, that bring us back to you. When we stand before you in this world, let it prepare us for the standing before you in the next, when nothing will distract us, nothing will remain hidden, and nothing will matter except your mercy. Ya Allah, we are tired of being absent while standing in your presence. So bring us back again and again and again, until our hearts learn at last how to remain only with you. So for a moment now, turn within yourself and make whatever dua it is that your inner self has been yearning for you to utter. A lot of us hold things inside of us, man, that we didn't put there, but they're there. And at some level, we have to be able to confront them, acknowledge them, and break them down with strategy, with the right people. But we deserve to no longer have them be obstacles in our life or in our way of relating to our Creator. Some of us have unfortunately put those obstacles in other people's hearts. You want to make dua that Allah never makes you one who disrupts the presence of someone else while they are in conversation with Him. Be that be at the time of the adhan, when the sunnah prayers are prayed and you might have finished your own, or an ill word that someone holds in their heart for so long that we still have responsibility for putting it in that place. For a few moments, just look in your heart and really look in it as if it's something that you believe is important. Make your own dua, and then we'll end our collective prayer together in a few moments. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the barakah of this gathering, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the presence of the righteous that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the sincerity of the most sincere that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, help us to watch over our hearts so that our hearts will watch over us. Make us those who make decisions through our hearts and never at their expense. Make us those who value the hearts that are around us and forgive us for any pain, ill will, or suffering that we have caused to the hearts of those that you entrusted to be in our care. Help us, Ya Rabbi, to taste the true sweetness that salah and dua can only offer. Make our prayer our anchor in our lives, not something that we choose to do when it's convenient, but we do it because you have told us to do it. And make us, Ya Rabbi, from amongst those who you have given real falah, real success, because we have this khushu'ah in our prayers when we stand in front of you. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Barakallahu feekum. People want to just put the chairs against the wall and we'll call the adhan and make Maghrib inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.